I don't even
We
know
have
enough about
Justin Trudeau, once again being heckled. Now, he's been heckled in this town before in Belleville, Ontario, but this time I want to see what your takeaways from this are. So he's being yelled at, being called a traitor and everything. Let's just go ahead and watch it. This is, he's really being heckled here. Warning, disturbing language. People say something against trans, maybe. Holding flags and signs, protesters hurled insults. Giant F Trudeau flag right behind him. He was celebrating the Liberal child care benefit. I'll tell you about that after. Eric, have you ever seen a traitor chant for a world leader that wasn't from some like historical video or anything? This seems to me worse than worse than the highest level of anti-Trump sentiment. Like I don't remember they would say F Trump, they would scream like he's a sexist and he's a racist, but a crowd chanting traitor, I don't recall even at the height of anti-Trumpness.
That's a good question. I don't, nothing comes to mind for me either. But shout out to that guy who has a Trump flag. Donald Trump is not going to save the United States, so he certainly ain't going to save Canada. But shout out to him. And my question is, as you know, I'm of the mindset that voting is not on the level, to say the least, right? And I guess my main question is here: why is it that we will constantly see more people who do not? Well, I don't group them all together. I know people don't like broad sweeping generalizations, but Biden, Trudeau, Newsom, all of these weirdo establishment, big wigs, we constantly see them getting heckled and getting screamed down, and people don't like them, and those people are obviously called extremists and racist or whatever. But where is the tape of the people? Like, yeah, you see a couple people taking selfies, but we're talking about what, a sea of 50 or 60 people here, and quite obviously most of them are against Trudeau. So where do we have the footage of the fans? I mean, you can go back 5 or 6 years and see thousands of people chanting for Donald Trump, who love Donald Trump and want to hear him speak, and they're fans, they're applauding. Why do we never see that for Biden or Trudeau or Newsom? We see a handful of people, who want to get a selfie with him, but we don't see hundreds, if not thousands of people counteracting or countering, I should say, the people who don't like him. How is that possible?
I think it's because the people that don't like him are united in the fact that they don't like him, and then the people who are on the left who don't like him because he's not left wing enough. So what you have is people on the moderate left, let's call them, even though that doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah.
They're voting for him because conservatives racist, they're anti-trans, all the tropes that people don't understand because they don't bother to look into anything. That's where Trudeau gets his vote in, and that turns out to be 32% of the country, which is a lot of seniors on the East Coast. And then you've got the French vote, which takes votes away from everybody, so they don't really like. If the French wanted to, they could put any one of the three major parties in power with a strong majority if they voted for liberal, conservative, or far leftists. but they don't. They vote for other French people. And what you have is the people that don't show up to anything that are just like, yeah, I vote Joe Biden, I vote liberal because, what's worse is the vile racists and sexists of the conservatives, not knowing what the reality is, not caring for some reason about tax prices, and I'll parlay that into how he's there to promote a child health or a child
Okay, wait.
benefit.
Before we
Yeah.
go into the child thing, I would argue, just answering my own question here, is that they do not have any actual supporters. They only have default brainwashed weirdos who only get the memo that the other side bad, but they couldn't tell you one thing they like about Trudeau. They couldn't tell you. Most notably, the example I like to use is I don't think you could find anybody. Maybe this is hyperbolic, but I don't think you could find one person in the entire country who's not on television that can tell you one thing they like about Kamala Harris. It would be she's a black woman. That would be it. So they don't actually have any fans. They have people that know them because the TV tells them that they are not a racist and they're going to save the planet, but nobody actually likes them. And that's why you don't have crowds of people waiting for him to speak. Right? So you have people who don't like him, people who are paying attention and don't like him, and people who are not paying attention and just get the download. But nobody actually actively likes any of these people, I would argue.
Yeah. And it happens at a rate in which it's hard for anybody to believe what actually goes by the way of the elections is actually real, especially in a country like this where you only need, like I said, 32 to 35% to win, and it ends up being conservatives and liberals neck and neck almost every time. And then, who knows how much they can finagle through there. Trudeau is promoting the child care benefit, which is you get a couple $100 a month if you have 2 children or more. Of course, that is fundamentally a lie. And what I mean by that is what they could do is tax you less, but instead what they do is they want to take the majority of the money and they want to give you breadcrumbs back. So we're going to tax you guys. Gas is up to 100 or $1.70 per liter. I don't know what the equivalent is at, but it's very high, Eric. Because he just added another carbon tax. We will take all your money and then we'll give it a little bit back so that people will support him, because some people are fools. Hey, I'm struggling. Oh, here's a couple $100 a month since you have 2 kids and you're creating more taxpayers for us. How about not taking my money in the first place? I have this argument with my friend a lot where he's talking about, how he wants some taxes to remain. He's in the healthcare industry, so of course he supports that. I say there needs to be cuts there because it's shit anyways, and I would rather pay for a portion of my healthcare personally and then the government take it and waste it, which they do constantly with healthcare, which they do constantly of subsidizing colleges, et cetera, et cetera. I am on the side of what gives you the right to take my money and just give it to me, and I'll decide what to do with it. So in this case, where he's giving you couple $100 a month, I don't remember what it was, 200, 400, something like that. Just don't take it from the people. If you can afford to give it back, then just don't take it from us. It's the fact that you want to take 95% of it and then give it back to people because you know that most people aren't going to claim it, or a strong percentage of people aren't going to claim it because they probably don't know it exists. And he's going to probably blame, people aren't aware of this because they're hecklers. And the last thing that I took from this video, Eric, is the sheer amount of people and how close they're allowed to get to the leader of the country. I don't care if it's Trudeau. I don't care if it's his robot predecessor, Stephen Happa. I don't care if it's the next wannabe Chad Pierre Polyev, whoever it is. This crowd of people should not be this close to the prime minister. And I understand America's 10 times bigger and has 10 times, 100,000 times the resources. But when they put out a place for the president to go, they map out like the 8 blocks or whatever it is. Here, you can have, and I'll bring it back up, you can have 100 people surround the prime minister within, violent distance of him, screaming in his face. We saw the one guy earlier screaming in his face, and whether you agree with him or not, Eric, he could do anything he wants to the prime minister. Where is your security? I've seen it firsthand. I went to go cover him. The only thing, they were just like, oh, he's coming out the front door, you guys. Just be aware, he's coming in the front door. And I'm just like, he's not coming in there. There's a back entrance, obvious. They thought they were tricking me. I just wasn't willing to go stand in a parking garage. And it's just like, You guys aren't smart. Either they don't care or they're
Yeah.
just dumb. The eternal question, Eric, are they dumb or do they not care? It's pathetic security for the leader of our country for four guys to walk out and be like, it's okay that this large man who could, probably beat most of us up is 2 inches from the prime minister screaming the F word at him and calling
Well,
him a
you
traitor.
remember.
That's okay. Great security, Canada. Great job.
Well, remember, it wasn't that long ago. I think somebody who was running for governor, was it governor or mayor, or somebody, I believe, running for mayor of New York, something in New York, a couple years back, who was actually attacked on stage. Like,
The Lee Zeldin guy?
was it Zeldin? I don't want to confuse
Yeah,
it.
it
So
was.
fact, okay,
And the guy had a blade and he was mentally ill, and
yeah.
it was this whole thing where they didn't sue him because he was a veteran and he was mentally ill. In Japan, Eric, the last prime minister was assassinated, and then I wrote about an assassination attempt. I think it was in February, because they don't have any guns there. Just like in Canada, we probably have more guns than Japan. But the last prime minister was assassinated by a homemade gun. It looked like a musket went off,
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
this guy was attempted to be assassinated with a homemade pipe bomb, which was luckily kicked away by, can't see my foot, kicked away, I'm making the motion, kicked away by a security guard, and then they bust out these briefcases that are bulletproof fabric, and they tackle the prime minister, again, very close to being assassinated, and it's just like, what are you guys doing? You have the person who's in charge of you here, in charge of the country, and your security is four guys, and you got to wait them through a crowd. Like, you see better security for Justin Bieber, Beyonce, you get any star.
Drake.
Shout out Drizzy. It's just pathetic. And as a person who
Dude,
is in the
sorry.
military, I know that's not the military planning that. That's two, marketing chicks who are busy on one day they're doing Bud Light ads. They come back to work on by Wednesday, and they're like, "How do we protect the prime minister? Force security. Nobody in Canada is that mean. Force security guards to be nice. Oh, they're just angry. They're just anti-trans. That's the people deciding what to do there." Patrick Bet David spoke to your
So
guy.
also, how are we?
You don't want to get to Cuomo? What, Eric?
No,
What?
no,
Go
I
ahead.
do. I do want to get to Cuomo, but how are we just? We're just still letting him slide on the blackface thing, like, dude.
Yes.
Okay, all right. It's just like, not once but twice, if I recall, he was spotted in like basically black body, and we just pretend it didn't happen. Whatever. Okay.
So you
fine,
care
fair
more
enough.
about the black body than the black
Well,
face. It's an echelon.
well, it's just like, I mean, it would be one thing if they weren't, bro. They harp on race so much, and then you have him giving these weird to SL2G GSBQ CIA, and he tries to do it. It's like, dude, your whole thing is about this, and then we just pretend like you didn't wear like, I'm not offended by blackface. I don't care,
Mm-hmm.
but you guys clearly do, right? Like, nobody, for what was the year when it became unacceptable, right? You could ask Sarah Silverman or Jimmy, was it Fallon or Kimmel? I always get them confused.
Kimmel.
The guy who played Kimmel, who played Karl Malone. When so you guys are
Howard Stern.
they had an episode, 2 episodes, I believe, of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia removed from Hulu because they did blackface at what was clearly a joke. It was obviously hilarious, and if you have any, an IQ above room temperature, you would realize that the joke was really on them. It was sort of a self-deprecating thing, right? Because the guys in Sunny are actually quite clever. But somewhere along the lines, it just became unacceptable. So you were doing it in 2002, dressed up as Karl Malone. Sarah Silverman was doing it. Trudeau was doing it probably, somewhere in the mid-90s or whatever that was. And it was all fun and games. But now, quite a Joy Behar was doing it, but now it's just untouchable, and we just pretend it doesn't happen. It's just ridiculous.
And it's the same people. It's not like it was historically different people.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Before we get to Cuomo being ridiculous on the PBD podcast, we're reminding you about our Patreon account, patreon.com/EOPod. If you sign up, you get a bonus podcast every week where it's uncensored, unmitigated chaos, where I'm usually wearing a costume of some kind. It is patreon.com/UOPod. That's Canadian prices, so it's even cheaper for those of you guys. Please help us out. Pimping ain't easy. It's an everyday struggle. Working on the weekend, like usual, as Drake says. And that's patreon.com/EOPod if you're watching on Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, Getter, and Twitch. We love the new Rumble audience. Thanks for watching on there. Please subscribe and share whatever you're on. If you're listening on audio, don't forget to check out the Patreon because we can show stuff in full there. We don't have to cut stuff up because we won't be copyright striked, which we were recently, and we've been stricken by Jimmy Fallon before. So please consider the Patreon at patreon.com/EOPod. Uncensored, everything's in full. Eric goes off the rails. We call it driving into the wall. But it's a good time, and we do it towards the end of the week is when it comes out, and there's exclusive stuff that nobody else sees there. Super chat from somebody, DMC, EMC. That P test looks staged. Great show, thank you. Protest, he means, not a P test. I was like, who did a urine test? One day I'll talk about the urine test I almost had to take in the military on a Patreon thing. It's
I
a
cannot
deep
wait
story.
to
One day, Eric, once we get enough Patreon subscribers, there will be many of, I have near death stories, P test story, disgusting stories.
Yeah, well, thanks for the super chat. I cannot wait.
Turn it up, Jordan.